Today, North Yorkshire County Council's executive agreed to set a 2% increase in council tax, as well as levy a 2% increase to cover for social care. Could you explain the reasons behind this?
Yes. It was done with a heavy heart, a genuinely heavy heart. It's not something we wanted to do, but it was necessary to do. And that's to try and help cover the funding gap that we've got going forward. We well understand the mixed response, and it was a mixed response from members of the public, some of which, protested quite strongly when responding to the consultation regarding the increase in council tax. But nonetheless, we've got to balance that with our priority of protecting services, especially to vulnerable people. We're here as elected members to offer our judgment, but it's right that we consult members of the public. Those members of the public have not responded in vain. The evidence that we've collected, we will be using to take to government and lobbying stronger than ever over the inequality of funding that we receive as a rural shire county where services to deliver cost that much more.
Could you explain the differences between different areas of the country in terms of council tax?
Yeah, when you look at some London boroughs, some of them, and I understand that Minster, I believe, are charging £500 council tax, and ours is £1,500. Anything up to 3 times is our council tax level higher than some of those London Mets. And that's because of the historic funding regime and their ability to raise money through things like car parking charges that we just don't have. Added to which, the cost of delivery of services within a rural shire is that much more, which is why I'm suggesting that the government stands firm over its fairer funding pledge and delivers on the promises made. I also understand that there will be some horror and shrieking and gnashing of gums from some of those London Mets. I'm sure there will be. But there is a way around this. The government cites spending power as funding for local government. Well, of course, the spending power, if we raise our council tax base by 2%, raises that much more in North Yorkshire. Let's allow, perhaps the government should be thinking of allowing the London Mets, those that would be affected by the fairer funding, and it would be fairer funding, I very much hope, to raise their council tax to a level to give them the spending power that they need. That's about fairness.
Yes. With this rise, are you concerned about whether North Yorkshire taxpayers will consider council tax acceptable?
I'm sure they don't. I don't find it acceptable. Let's be clear. We're on their side, which is why we're doing all we can to put right that wrong. We recognise that, and again, that's the evidence that we need. The public dismay at what we're having to do, not want to do, but having to do to protect those services again, especially to vulnerable people. I'm not prepared to go home this evening having followed some pure political ideology and see those services to vulnerable people be put at risk.
Finally, North Yorkshire County Council's budget for next year has had an added complication in the meeting heard today, that the government is looking to ban the council from swapping money from its direct schools grant to prop up special educational needs and disabilities funding, and that this year's gap is projected to be £12 million.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is that the accumulated gap will be 12 million over the lifetime of our 3 or 4 year plan. This year's gap will be 5 million, but that's likely to grow to 12 million. Yes, that's very true. Only on Friday we were informed that the government responded to a consultation over a technical term called ring fencing dedicated schools grant. Now that can be taken as a real positive if we're being optimistic, in that the Department for Education have recognised that the general council taxpayers are cross-subsidising their services, and hopefully, there that will take that sort of message back to the Treasury and get the funding that we need so we don't have to cross-subsidise it from general council tax. Again, it's one of the reasons why we're having to put council tax back up. So I welcome that if the inference is that we're going to get a cheque to go with it. But I think the very clear message to the people of North Yorkshire, especially those affected under the designated schools, grant schools, high needs and those with disabilities, is that they will still get those services. They will not stop. This is a technical sort of spat, I suggest, between the Department for Education and Treasury, and we've been caught in the middle of it, I think, and I very much hope, with some optimism, that we will get the funding that we need. We've had so much, but we do need more. And that's said by an authority that's nationally recognised as being efficient and good in the game in terms of children's services.